And Nike says tariffs could add around $1 billion to its costs this trading year, and that it is looking to reduce its reliance on Chinese production in a bid to hamper the impact of President Trump's trade policies. This as the firm forecasts a smaller than expected slump in first quarter revenue, sending shares up by more than 10% in extended trade. So there you have it. Nike shares up almost 10%. In terms of the European sportswear giants, interesting to see that this is spilling over into the European space, and we're seeing a big lift in Adidas, Puma, JD Sports as well on the back of these Nike numbers.
So I hope you loaded up on shoes, because I mean that was the message coming through, that there are price hikes coming. So as we spoke earlier with one of our guests about inflation expectations for consumers, this is one. If they had concerns that the tariffs were going to cost them down the line, we are now hearing from a series of retailers. It wasn't just Nike, it was H&M talking about much higher prices coming into the US market. It is about to hit. So the only mitigating factor short term is any inventory that has been pulled forward, stuffed into factories and warehouses ahead of these moves. So that is the one mitigating factor till the increases come into effect. But long term, what does it mean? Shrinking for a very big business from double digits, 16% of footwear in the China sourcing area, to single digits, 9%. That has some effect on shipping lanes. It has an effect on where it's located. I think there are still changes coming, and that's going to be fascinating to see who the beneficiaries are.
It's a stock, just from the stock point of view, there's just been pummeled. I mean, the COVID highs were extraordinary. It was like, I mean, I've got the figure here. It was up at $180, give or take the change. And it's now, what, less than roughly a third of that as well. And it's, that's including the move as well. So, there's a lot of bad news that's been factored in. I think Nike's one of those amazing companies. It's not going away. It is always going to be a large part of many people's lives as well. I've got a little bit of knowledge in this area as well, and I'm kind of aware of the competitive threats in some of their specialist areas, like they were talking about in the conference call, like including running. There are enormous threats out there, but Nike still has a really, really strong offering at the top end of those. And I agree with you when you were saying about some price rises coming at that end. I think the middle to bottom end, though, I don't know how they can, because the truth of the matter is, it is so competitive. There are so many amazing brands of, for instance, running shoe that I'd never even heard of 5 years ago.
I mean, who's price sensitive here? I would say I look for a discount when I'm buying some of this product.
But they're all great shoes. You can run a marathon in any of the top 10 brands now and not spend more than, if you really wanted, more than $150, which is not a lot for a top-end shoe.
But to pick up on your point around sports and the focus, and marathon and clearly one of those sports, replacement cycle, and that is quite different to athleisure wear. If you buy something for the athleisure wear category, it can last for many, many years. But if you're buying it for performance and for sport, I've got to say, like with my trainers, I replace them every 9 months, because there are holes in the tips, holes in the back, and the tread's worn down from constant use.
It's about the mileage you put in them, though, isn't it, really? But do you remember that interview we had? A great interview about 12 months ago with the guy who was he was an owner of Dick's Sporting Goods, and I keep remembering this interview, and we were talking about Ozempic. We were talking about weight loss drugs. We were talking about GLP-1. I'm like, well, surely that's bad news because people are going to go and do less sport. Ergo, they're not going to buy as much kit. And he's like, no. Because of what you're saying, that people just wear this stuff, they love a bit of athleisure as well. Actually, Dick's could be a beneficiary because people are going to have to size down but are still going to wear athleisure. And I thought that was a really compelling and interesting counter-argument.
I think also when you're feeling good about yourself, you want to buy new clothes, you want to buy new things to show off your look. It's hardly a motivation to go buy clothes if you're not feeling confident about yourself. I think it's interesting to come back to the share price action we've seen in Nike year to date. The stock is off about 15% year to date. Adidas is also off about 15%. And Nike has so many more challenges than Adidas, you could argue. They've got massive challenges around innovation. They're also much more exposed to U.S. sales. So from a tariff perspective, are much more at risk here. And yet Adidas shares have suffered as well, which begs the question, is there a trade here? When you look at this morning, the fact that Nike's shares are lifting these European names here, is there an opportunity to get involved on the European side, given their lesser exposure to the trade front?
They still trade at a premium to Adidas, despite all the travails they've had, and actually they've performed worse than Adidas over the last couple of years.
Exactly.
Adidas had a bit of a redux post Casper Rorsted. Remember, he was there right at the nadir there. But actually, they trade it, in terms of pure forward PE, they traded a big multiple. I think it's like 35 times as opposed to 20 times for Adidas.
Can I just put this with the other big category we talk about often, that is luxury? Both categories have pulled back. And what is it saying about the consumer that is not willing to fork out cash on things they certainly did for a number of years post-COVID?
Which begs